Hello, I am Dennis Green, and welcome to the Church Development webinar about conducting a capital campaign this fall, how to get ready to launch that. Now, I shall launch my efforts at sharing with you our technology, and I'm mastering the Control F5 to share my screen and keep you informed. Now, if you have any issues, should this not, and no, it does not work because I didn't press share screen. And there, hey, victory. We have technological victory. Thank goodness. So thank you for joining me. Now, I welcome your questions. Please type them in the chat box. I also have my coworker, Stephanie, who's sending me text messages to make sure I answer questions that arise. Now, you can share this webinar. Please feel free to share this with anyone. We give away this information as part of our ministry. We make our money doing capital campaigns, and our real passion is about stewardship and education. So, for instance, I've written this book, and I'll give it away to you free. I'll hold it up again later, the stewardship system. All of our research related to how to increase your charitable giving without fundraising. So I'll send you this recording shortly after it's done. Feel free to send that on to others. So our agenda today, and we'll move real quickly, we have sought to shift from the hour-long webinar to the TED Talk length webinar. So we'll move pretty quickly on how you can prepare for a capital campaign this fall. And the 6 things that we're going to cover, and again, I would welcome your questions as we proceed: how to engage leaders, how to gather information, how to build consensus, how to conduct a feasibility study, how to communicate, and what to do right now, how to leap into action. Now, as we begin, I'd like to tell you 2 quick stories. We worked at, when I say we, my coworker, Daryl Prater, who's kind of the rock star of church development, created a capital campaign, is actually really near his home. So he was very happy to only have to travel his 5-minute commute. And a lot of times our commutes are 5 states away, which is just fine. But it was a wonderful contrast in the old paradigm versus this consensus-based paradigm. The church raised $2 million in their capital campaign 3 years earlier. They hired church development. Daryl took this approach and he raised $3.5 million. So here we have an apples to apples comparison. What happens if you run a capital campaign and you just ask? It's the old-fashioned way of just go door to door. Well, they did that. They raised $2 million. They then hired us 3 years later to do a very different approach, a consensus-based approach, and we raised $3.5 million. That's a great contrast. Next thing, yesterday I was working for a church on their capital campaign, discussing leadership gifts with a donor, and they were willing to make an estate quality gift of over $1 million. And all it took was just the ask, would you be interested in doing it? So we know that it works. You take the gentle approach, people are generous, and they make generous gifts as well. So a little bit about church development. Founded in 1992. I used to do this work with all kinds of nonprofit organizations, and I was in a car wreck and spent 7 months in traction thinking about it. And that's when I founded church development, so I could work combining my professional and my spiritual interests as well. We take a very different approach. Yes, we begin with scripture and take the spiritual approach, but then we add into it a whole lot of research and science. The ask is based in prayer and not pressure. We're with you for 3 years afterwards to help you increase your regular weekly giving. And we start the planned giving effort as well. Usually we raise as much in a planned giving effort as we do in the capital campaign itself. This is my favorite scripture. It's all about stewardship. We've got a ton of experience, 30 years. We raised around $1 billion. I've even published my academic research in the International Journal of Innovation, Education, and Research. And that amount of money and that amount of data does equip me to share with you what works and what does not work. Number 4, I'm a big fan of Daniel Kahneman, who got the Nobel Prize in economics. So we borrow everything we can from the academic world and the corporate world and the nonprofit world to benefit you as you manage your church capital campaign. Alliance 5 is all about the associations and professional alliances that I have that allow me to draw from their information to share with you. So let's talk about preparing for a fall church capital campaign for you, okay? So step number one is to engage your leaders. You got a parish council or a vestry or a session or a board. So begin there and begin by asking their opinion. Ask questions. I myself am much more comfortable proceeding on a one-to-one basis. I really like number 1C. I like going to my top donors. It's okay to make a phone call. It's okay to meet the coffee. It's okay to talk about after church. Just on your way out the door, just say, hey, look, have you got a minute? I could call you this week ahead and ask your opinion. People like to share their opinion. They may recognize that they are not an expert, but they are a member and they have been through this. I really like what happened at this church. We managed the 4th capital campaign in 12 years. So yes, we had a ton of burnout, and yes, we had some anger that we were not done, but guess what? We were a smashing success because we began by asking people's input. And we were just very upright and said, we've done 3 capital campaigns in the last 9 years, but we've still got a couple $1 million of debt we need to address. Should we do a capital campaign? What's your opinion? Should we carry the debt, which will be a burden on our budget, or should we ask people again, recognize that some people are going to get mad? Well, we asked individuals, we asked volunteer leaders, we asked top donors, we asked the current parish and finance councils, and we checked in, we asked their opinion. We found somebody who was very excited, who said, well, yes, we should absolutely do this. Count me in. I'll be your spokesperson. We said, God bless you. This guarantees your spot in heaven. So let us proceed on that basis. Now, this is very different. I've also been in a church. I remember it was St. Peter's was the church. And I remember the church business administrator standing up one day and just announcing, we're going to do a capital campaign. I've decided we've got to do this, so you need to give. And I'm like, holy smokes, that's the exact wrong thing. And that's when I was attending there as a member. And I'm just thinking to myself, gosh, I wish they would have asked my opinion. I could have volunteered to help them think this through. It did not go well. It could have gone a lot better if they proceeded on this very gentle consensus-based process. So now here we are in the middle of April. And now is the best time to begin doing this. And it might take you a week. It might take you 2 weeks. Who cares? Make 5 or 10 phone calls or 5 visits with people after church just to say, what do you think? Should we proceed? Should we not? Here are the issues. Now, people are honored by that, and that is a guarantee that they will be generous in their giving because they will become part of the solution rather than a victim of a sales pitch. Okay, number 2, in preparing for your church capital campaign this fall, gather information. I got this wonderful story about this church, Prince of Peace, where it's just all of the most wonderful factors just fell into place to make this one of the most delightful capital campaigns I've ever worked on in my life. The delightful, cherubic, lovable pastor, thank goodness, really competent staff, even though really stretched, really overworked. And I'm hoping that, the capital campaign takes a little weight off of their budget so they can hire more staff. They're very talented staff. They just need a few more people. But anyway, step number 2, we really gathered a lot of information. When I say we, I really a lot of credit to the pastor and the 2 business administrative staff leaders who did the bulk of the work. But anyway, they gathered a lot of information. So what are we talking about? Everybody had that same question. Well, the view we're looking at right here, they wanted to build a foyer that extended out into this direction, the narthex, so that after worship, people would exit and then have the ability to interact socially. And that's where a whole lot of ministry and announcements would happen. They also were that's number 1. And then to the left of the screen, they were going to build a parish hall, and then behind and down, they were going to renovate the current parish hall into additional classroom and meeting space. Well, of course, everybody wants information. What's it going to cost? How's it going to affect our lives? So we really had to be equipped with information before we could begin the dialogue. So we talked about the human impact, the facility detail, square footage impact. Like we're gonna, at this point, we had to build this foyer. How many square feet, what would happen? And in this direction, we were gonna add on offices as well. And we really had to define, how many offices, how many square feet, what would it cost? And then we had to get an estimate from some professionals as well. So everybody is aware of the problem. What are our solutions and what are our options? And everybody has those questions. So we have got to get busy early on right now. Now, the good news is I have, because I've been doing this for 30 years, and I know you're thinking, oh, that's when he was born. No, but almost. I have really wonderful relationships with a bunch of professionals. So if you need to gather information, if you need to build consensus, I've got professionals that I can share with you. I have bankers that I can connect you with if you're going to get a loan. I have a really wonderful facilitator who just has those dynamic interpersonal skills that can help you in that consensus building process. And I've got architects who understand the world of construction, who can give you just in a moment's glance possible cost estimates. And it's so wonderful to have those people on speed dial, and they don't charge to talk to you for a few minutes to give you some assessment of what might happen. Of course, they have to charge if they're going to spend days, weeks, or months serving your congregation, but it costs nothing. And I feel very lucky because collectively these people have so many years of experience that they can just in a nanosecond help you get going in the right direction. Anyway, call me if I can help. Call or email. I'm happy to share those at no cost with you. So once you've gathered that information, you really have got to build consensus. This takes time, but costs almost nothing. If you're gonna raise a couple of $1 million, spend a little bit of time and a little bit of money building consensus. One of my best references, I'm working on a campaign at this moment. My first campaign I did there in 1998, and it was a lovely experience. And the minister had the greatest quote for our references, and somebody called him and said, "How'd that work out?" And the memorable quote was, "We need to do this every year, whether we need the money or not." Yeah, that's fantastic. That was on in the plaza in Kansas City, Missouri. It's just a beautiful place and a beautiful old building. I'll never forget that. Anyway, you've got to build consensus. Now, this church, St. Charles Borromeo, is this dynamic young pastor, very articulate, real wildly popular blog. If you don't do a blog, please consider that. Some people like blogs, some people like podcasts. You can slice out the sermon and that can become your podcast. You can have it transcribed. Now, another thing that you need to do, forgive me for diverging, is you've got to have an app for your church. Do it now. You've got a couple of options, but this is the trend. So do it now, please. Just like in the old days, what's a website? Well, you're going to get one, so do it now. The church app is the next thing. It's got outgoing and incoming information on your phone, notifications, information, education, the blog, the podcast. It has social media qualities as well. If you just have it built by a contractor, it might cost you $1,200. A lot of times you can get it for free. If you have someone who helps the electronic processing of your donations, you can do this for free. But please do it now. You're going to have to redo it probably next year, but it's like your website. It's going to be with us forever. It will also facilitate generosity as well. So please do that. Okay. It can also help you build consensus because it's a way of gathering input, you being connected with your people. Now, just think about it for a moment. You got that church app that kind of takes the place of email, texting, and so many other, and Facebook. I mean, so many things can happen in that app. And number 3A, it can help you build consensus by asking for input. So let's do that. Okay, let's ask for input. Now, have you done SurveyMonkey? Raise your hand. Yes, me too. I've done thousands of those. So, do some SurveyMonkey questions. send out surveys, do town hall meetings, do announcements at church. And I see that we have got a question. SurveyMonkey costs nothing, and it's easy. Okay, so the question was, what's it cost? It costs nothing, and it's easy. So please do it. And we have done, I was just looking at our SurveyMonkey account. We do so many surveys that we have a paid account, but we didn't have a paid account for many years. You can do it for free. So please do that. Town hall meetings for free. Again, I have a wonderful facilitator. If you'd like a professional person to lead that, very articulate, very comfortable in the church world, let me know. I can pass that on. I like the idea that building consensus requires multiple iterations. So it's not one and done. So let's have one early on from a small group. Let's have a larger group of consensus. Let's have everybody in the church as well. You can do all of this. St. Charles Borromeo just did a fantastic job of gathering input. They had many, many town hall meetings, some after church, some early in the morning, some late in the evening, some with food, some not. It just gave everybody a chance to share their input. And they did 2 rounds of consensus building. So they had a very high level of consensus. And like any common sense would dictate, we followed the guidance of the people. And there now it's a whole new face of the parish. They did a capital campaign a couple of years ago and built the entryway that you see right now. And the second capital campaign, they are renewing and freshing parts of the school, parts of the cafeteria, the entrance, the early childhood center, a whole bunch of very interesting things that people care about very much. Okay, so that's number 3. And the next one that I want to talk about is doing a feasibility study. Now, the church pictured here is a wonderful story, St. James and St. Joseph. And we got a really good photo of the roof. The roof was not just falling apart, but the beams, the structure underneath that was falling apart as well. And so basically everything that you see had to be removed and the structure had to be redone. And then they had to put a roof back on it. I mean, if there'd have been a hurricane or a tornado or something in the middle of this, it would have been an epic fail. It would have been horrible. Now, I'm going to leap right to the punchline on this. We did a fantastic job. When I say we, it really, the credit goes to the members and the pastor. I mean, they really spread out the consensus building, and they found a person who had been a member a long time ago, who still loved the parish, but had married and moved away and had accumulated a great deal of wealth and was willing to put up the first $1 million. And why did this happen? Because they very deliberately sought to engage that person and ask their opinion and their input and treat them like a human being and not just a source of money. And that person made a very generous leadership gift, and that inspired everybody. Okay. Well, in your feasibility study, you discover what kind of financial support there is. You do interviews, you do online paper surveys, paper and envelope at the back of church, but most people feel very comfortable with an online survey at this point in time. It takes about 6 weeks, costs about $14,000. Yes, $14,000 is a lot of money. However, every denominational expert will tell you, please spend the money, hire a professional, do a good job. And when you do that, you get wonderful results, like what happened at St. James and St. Joseph. I was working in a church in the south side of Denver. And, most of these responses are either in interviews or by SurveyMonkey, but I got a paper survey back. And in the margin was written, I would donate $400,000 if you bought that little lot right on the corner of our property. Well, this certainly got my interest. And I, of course, began inquiring, what would that lot cost? Well, the lot cost about $30,000. So I shared this information. We have an anonymous donor who would be willing to make a gift of significantly more if we could buy that. So could we proceed? Absolutely. Absolutely. We moved ahead with that. Now, we wouldn't know that unless we have, it's real important what your goal be: realistic, achievable, and exceedable. So we've done so many of these. We've done around 200 feasibility studies over the past 30 years, and we've really learned what works and what doesn't work. So our forecasting is quite accurate at this time. It's above 95%. And we tend to set a goal that we make sure that we exceed, just to generate that enthusiasm and good feelings. And it also helps, number two, it helps, a good feasibility study helps you develop a tailored capital campaign plan so it meets the unique personality of your congregation. And it works just like St. James and St. Joseph. This next one, number 5, and we're almost done. And I welcome any other questions. I'm clicking on my chat box, and I see that we have a question that came in. Yes, I am willing to meet with your committee by Zoom to discuss these topics. Yeah, there's no charge. And as I mentioned before, I'll send you a copy of this book for free. I've got boxes of them. And when I wrote this book a couple of years ago, I remember the editor sent it back and said, "Do something. It's too boring." I'm a boring person, I guess, but if it was full of facts and figures and case studies like we're going through right here. And so it took an additional year to put in. I wrote 7 more stories that I think are kind of fun. Like one time I rode a motorcycle across Africa. That was a pretty interesting month. I'm very interested in cognitive brain science, so I took a class on alligator wrestling. Let me tell you, that was fear-inducing. But you know what is worse? That's not the most difficult thing I've ever done. The most difficult thing I've ever done is stand-up comedy. Okay, that's horrifying. That is so scary. And I did it on an open mic night. 20 other people signed up, 15 of them. The pressure was so great they forgot their name in the middle of their set. They couldn't continue. That's a lot of pressure. Okay, all right, back to business at hand. You've got to communicate, and your level of communication has to be thorough in every possible media. Because no matter what you do, people will still say, "What are you talking about?" And that's if you've done a thorough job. So you've really got to do your old standard newsletter. And at this point, some are going to be in the mail and some are going to be email. Do video. Video now has become a very inexpensive media. It does not need to be slick and polished. It can be a volunteer with an iPhone explaining the plans. Now, if you would like some examples, call me or email me. I'll send you some wonderful examples that literally took 2 minutes to do. Anyway, you can do this. It costs nothing. Use email, use social media, use your current church bulletin. But remember, only about a third of your people or a fourth of your people are going to be there on a typical Sunday, or maybe it's even less. Okay, so you make an announcement after church, and still you're not hitting everybody. So don't think that you are. You've got to do multiple weekends, and you've got to use every possible format. And this is something you've got to spend money on. Now, going back to one of my earlier recommendations, get the app. That just takes care of so much communication. It goes on the app, and just like the Facebook app, a little thing will pop up that says, "Hey, you've got an update or an announcement or a message." So please do the app and do it right away. Now, this was really important. So you see the portico, that's the drive-through drop-off, very important for seniors. Beyond that, you see that big triangular set of windows. That was their new foyer. And then beyond that is the entry to the church. Well, the foyer was gigantic. The architectural rule of thumb these days is that your entry area needs to be about a third of your worship space. So they followed best practices. We had some people fighting it tooth and nail, talking about it's stupid, it's a waste. Why would we do that? The church I grew up, think about the church you grew up, you leave worship, you come out and you're in the rain. You go out that door and maybe it's a phone booth airlock that you go through. Well, the people who complained were unaware of what would happen in a new foyer. And we explained and we showed lots of different examples of what happens. So much ministry happens in that foyer before and after church. You've got announcements, you've got invitations, You've got sign up activities. It is way beyond the social benefit. Now, the social benefit, I want to divert just for a minute to talk about that and encourage you to read the researcher named George Barna. He coined the term church shoppers. It's a term I don't like. He doesn't like it. Nobody likes it. But what it says is that people are now consumers. He was the bearer of the bad news that dogma no longer matters. People join a church based on their social needs rather than theology. Isn't that fascinating? Now, at this point, the people who define themselves as spiritual but not religious is now 27% of our population. It's growing about a rate of about 16% per decade. So the top three denominations are spiritual but not religious, Catholic, and Protestant. So just the fact that me saying these things tells you we probably had better do a better job of understanding our constituents and seeking to serve them. And creating this foyer where social interaction and ministry can happen was a brilliant move, was a very, very important move. And our communication efforts really helped to decrease that initial resistance to that. So spend money, spend time, have staff, have volunteers, do a thorough job. Okay, we're moving towards closing this up. And I want to talk about action right now, but just to summarize, if you're thinking about a fall capital campaign, it's April, the middle of April. Step number one, engage leaders. Step number two, gather information so that you can respond to questions. So number one is start small. Number two is do your homework, kind of begin to get your act ready. I can help you gather information because I have so many now friends, but professional associations in this business. I can help you with information, just immediately connect you to bankers, facilitators, construction experts, and I can serve as your fundraising volunteer just to help you kind of get your act together. Build consensus and be deliberate about building that consensus. Do not have an autocratic approach where you just announce we're going to do this, all y'all need to line up. It doesn't work anymore. People vote with their feet, they'll leave because of the displeasure. Number four, do a feasibility study where you formally announce we're doing a feasibility study. We're thinking about doing some fundraising, so give us your input. We want everybody to participate. That's golden. It will tell you exactly where people are. Now, sometimes, like right now, I completed a feasibility study and I recommend that they not do a capital campaign. There are two different groups in the church. One group wanted to fix the old building and one group wanted to build a new building. And it's kind of pretty approximately even sized groups. And there's nothing wrong with either one of those opinions. It's just you've got two different groups. And neither one of those groups wants to budge off of that. And so I feel like sometimes I'm a doctor conducting an x-ray before surgery. You just have to be blatantly honest and say the facts. You know, this exists. You have two different groups and neither one of them is going to budge, nor would the person in this group give towards that. Nobody in this group will give towards that. So you got to resolve this before you can do any fundraising. So this is not a surprise. The only thing that I brought to this was a bit of objectivity and quantification. So you have to deal with this before you can do any fundraising. So I left it at that, and I got a town hall meeting coming up here, I think in 2 weeks, to talk more about that. So a feasibility study, absolutely essential. Number five, begin thinking now how I'm going to communicate in every possible venue. Now, number six, and then we will wrap it up. And I think I answered this question earlier, but it's popping up here. Yes, I can meet with your committee by Zoom. It's kind of fun to do. I don't mind Zoom at this point after I've been doing it now for 2 years. I can meet with your committee any point in time. Doesn't cost anything. Just to have a discussion. I can walk through the same exact slideshow and equip them to make some decisions. Doesn't cost anything. It's my pleasure. And I'm an extrovert. I like meeting new people and I love my work. Fundraising is fun. Time I met my wife, bunch of friends over the many decades. Anyway, I love this and I'm happily willing to share with you everything that I have learned. But number 6, and then we will conclude, uh, do it now. It's April 15th. Like, let's say you want to have a commitment Sunday, November. You need to get on that horse and giddy up this second. Start talking to your leaders informally, set in motion the gathering of information. To be aware that you're going to have to build consensus, and don't wait till July to do that. First of all, in July, everybody's gone. Okay, so we really want to build consensus now so we can get our get our game on over the summer to hit the fall running, because this is not a quick process. Get going now to be a success this fall. A feasibility study takes about a month and a half, so you better do it really pretty quick before the summer hits. Start your communication process in all these different channels right now. I'm happy to help as a volunteer, because it doesn't take much time and it's kind of fun. I can share with lots of examples. But there is an interesting phenomenon happening right now, that there's a dramatic increase in giving, particularly at the top levels. This is a donor pyramid. The norm in the past was 80-20, but it's now becoming a 90-10. I feel like my life is unreal in so many ways, but just this week, I'm working with a pastor who said, Dennis, I got a call from one of our constituents who lives in Phoenix, many, many miles away, not here ever, but wants to make a $100,000 challenge grant to improve our kitchen and our fellowship hall. I think, okay, we are all totally connected. And whoever that person was is psychic, and they are a saint. And I'm predicting that is probably the result of new wealth. I mean, the Dow has been above 30 for way more than a year, and it's going to stay up there. 8.8% of the population now have a net worth above $1 million. Foundation giving is up 19%. Overall giving is up. So we have the potential for some spectacular leadership giving, which is really going to be the subject of our next webinar. Which I can leap ahead to that one, which is, oh gosh darn it, I put down May 1 and it's May 18th. Okay, I'll send you out an email about that. How to facilitate $1 million gift to your church capital campaign. Joyfully, not painfully. Okay, joyfully. That's coming up May 18th. I'll send you a note about that. But I mentioned these resources earlier. If you give me a shout, email or call, I can connect you with a visioning facilitator, an estimator of facility costs, a church loan expert, and I can be your volunteer church capital campaign consultant as well. So we are here to help you. It is my pleasure. Hopefully I'll see you May 18th. Thank you so much for joining me today. Call or email anytime. Go forth, good luck, and God bless. Bye-bye.